All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks for being here. I thought it would be maybe helpful and appropriate as we embark on the search for our next head women's basketball coach to have a little bit of availability today. The search process has already begun. In fact, I think we spent 5 or 6 hours yesterday holed up in the war room, starting the process of mining for candidates. But after today, our sole focus will be on identifying the next leader for our women's basketball program. So I won't be available until the process is concluded, but did want to give you a chance to ask questions today. You received a statement from me on Saturday, so I don't think it's necessary to repeat everything that was in that statement. So let's just open it up for questions, just about the future, the process, and what it'll look like.
First question here goes to Greg Hubbard.
So one question to the past, at least for me. So surprised by you by this, and did you have an opportunity to counter?
Yeah, I was a little surprised just because it's rare to lose a coach after 1 year. Coach and I had conversations throughout the year just about the progress of the program. I made sure she knew that I was very excited about where I thought the program was headed. Shortly before the conference tournament, I was made aware that Minnesota had interest in her. Talked to she and her agent and just said, hey, we love what you're doing here. You're the kind of coach I'd want my daughters to play for. That's about the highest compliment I can give. And we certainly want to talk about what we need to invest in from a staff perspective and also from just general resources to keep the momentum going. We want to keep you here. And really, the conversation she and I had was, hey, let's focus on the team. We're trying to win some games to get in the NCAA tournament, and we'll sit down and have that conversation. What By the time we got a chance to have a conversation, we didn't get into a lot of details because I think this was more of a family decision for her. She alluded to that in her statement. I certainly alluded to that in my statement. I don't want to put too much words in her mouth. I do think she's excited about Minnesota too, but her conversation with me was this is not a comparison of the two programs or resources or any of that. This is back close to home and for some family reasons that really aren't mine to divulge. But I think it was a time and season in her and Jay's life where that was something that was really interesting. So I hate it for West Virginia. I hate it for WVU, but most of all, I'm disappointed for the young women in our women's basketball program because it's hard to go through transition.
John?
What do you, the qualifications, what are you looking for in a coach when you've got to hire somebody?
I'm fairly open and want to cast a wide net. I've hired a lot of coaches. When you start an athletic program right off the bat early in your career, you end up running a lot of coaching searches. So I'm maybe not quite to 20, but close to 20 coaching searches. 5 have been basketball. Some of those are men's basketball. Some of them women's basketball. The only coach that I've ever had to let go was myself. I let myself go. So I've had success hiring coaches, and they've come from different backgrounds. And I think going into this one, it's important to run an efficient process. I like to use a basketball term: be quick but don't hurry, because you don't want to rush it, and you got to get it right. But I think right now, this moment in time, a broad net to really look at all candidate profiles is important.
Justin Jackson from
Mr. Baker, in terms of Coach P's contract buyout, would there be any negotiations with Coach to lower that or change it? Has there been any discussions about the buyout? Her buyout?
No, I mean, there's a contractual amount, and actually it's being, I think, figured out and finalized and all of that, and I believe there's a 30-day time period to pay that, but I wouldn't have the authority, I don't think, to take a university contract and unilaterally decide, hey, we'll take less money, but I'm not sure I'd be excited to do that even if I did. So, no, either she or the school will be responsible to pay that.
down here in front with Mike.
After this news came out, there's been a lot of speculation, and I know you can't speak on any possible candidate or anything right now, on maybe who the fans would want to receive this job. It's been out on social media. Just speaking generally, kind of piggyback off the other question on what you may look for in terms of this search, does experience level matter to you in terms of where somebody's been, how long they've been coaching? Does the fact that this is, because this would be the first time you're searching in terms of the main guy searching for a major conference position, this is kind of be your first, does experience level matter? Does the standard at West Virginia matter? What kind of are you looking for, as much detail as you possibly could give in terms of that person?
Yeah.
And where they may have come from, because,
Yeah.
you know.
I think it would be probably a little early for me to speculate on specific candidates, but I assume one that you're referring to is Coach Stevens, and I'm familiar with her background. You know, I'm unique in that I'm probably one of athletic director profiles. I coached and I came from Division II, so I have a lot of respect for success that any coach has at any level that wins at a high level. So I think the way I would address any candidate is we're going to cast a wide net and consider a variety of profiles. As you go through the process and start to narrow those down, you're laying them all out side by side, and some people are stronger in some areas than the others, and you start to whittle that down and start to manage a process. And so anybody who expresses interest in the job, we're going to consider. But it would probably be a little early for me to speculate on how that'll shake out in terms of any certain candidate. But I have a lot of respect for coaches at all levels. I spent some time in the public schools. I mean, I think that's the hardest job in the world. You don't get to recruit, or you're not supposed to. And so you just take what's given to you. You have to change your system and your style of play to really fit personnel. You're not recruiting players to a system. And so I have a lot of respect for coaches in general, and anybody who has a high level of success, regardless of level, I respect that.
Leslie?
Obviously, this team made the tournament this year, and there's a lot of talent on this team. With the transfer portal being the way it is, have you had any conversations with any players on the team about possibly staying, or do you expect there to be some level of transferring out of the program with another coach incoming?
It would probably be hard for me to speculate what the young ladies in our program individually will make decisions to do. I did get a chance to meet with them. So Dawn informed me Saturday mid-morning. She was going to meet with the team at 11. She met with them for a few minutes, then I stayed and met with them. So I got a chance to visit with them, tell them how proud I am of them, tell them this program the women's basketball program is about a lot of people. It's about everybody in West Virginia, everybody who's the WVU alum, everybody in our athletic program, everybody at the university. But it's mostly centered and focused around student athletes, both current and former. And they're the ones that make the program go. And so I just shared with them how proud I was of them, how much pride I have in what's happening at WVU and the unique opportunity we have to represent this entire state, and that doesn't exist everywhere, and that I feel confident that the opportunities here moving forward for success, both personal and team, are as good or greater than anywhere else out there, and I hope that they'll stay. But the last thing I left them with is, no matter what, to focus on their family and their education, because that's the most important thing. Sometimes, you go through a long season, and in March it's pretty chaotic. They're on the road a lot. There's a lot going on. They're missing some class, and so it would be easy then when you get to this point, and now your coaches are gone, to relax and not go back and refocus on your classes. And so Natasha Oakes, our XWA, was in there with me, and that was probably the gist of my message is, love you, want you here, proud of you, feel great about the opportunities here. But one thing that's the most important is take care of your classes, take care of each other, and make sure you spend time with family.
And back there, Tony?
Wren, you mentioned that you've hired coaches, but obviously the world has changed in coaching with NIL and with the transfer portal. What has added to your list of requirements now as you look for a coach in this new
think you're less inclined to worry about natural geographic high school recruiting footprint than we once were, just because the transfer portal has changed the impact that high school players are having on teams. Now, that's still a factor and still something that we're talking about in our committee and weighing, but where it weighs relative to the past is probably not as high. I think you want somebody who has experience with the portal, who understands how it works. There was an article in The Athletic just in the last few days where they had actually interviewed a lot of student athletes that weren't football and men's basketball players to ask them what NIL played in their decision process. And that certainly is increasing, and it's becoming more and more of a factor in all sports, and we understand that, and we're definitely in tune with that. And so I think having somebody who understands how you mine for data in the portal, how you stay on top of it. If sometime it'd be great if football, Neil's probably be mad at me for walking him into this, but one of the things I did when I first got here is sit down and learned exactly when they start in terms of monitoring people in the portal. And so right now they're looking at underclassmen across the country and evaluating them in the event that they were to enter the portal, because you have to kind of already know if you would take them when they go in. You can't start that process when they go in. And so I think somebody who understands all of that is that's definitely a factor.
Jared?
Yeah, Wren, you mentioned having some conversations with Dawn about investments in the future of the program before she left. I guess what areas do you think need invested in this program to make it more desirable or better?
Yeah, we constantly benchmark that in the conference, and we're pretty well in the top half in just about everything. Our facilities are great. The way we travel is near the top of the league. Our salaries are roughly top half of the league. We'll take some time to benchmark that again. I think I've shared before, my goal is always, as I onboard here, to get everybody in the top half, and then once we get there, we'll talk about trying to get in the top fourth. And so those things are important. She and I never got into the details of what she thought that we might need moving forward. But I do feel like if you look at our sports portfolio, women's basketball is one that we put the resources in to be competitive, and that's certainly something that we'll do as we onboard a new coaching staff. We'll take time to make sure that's still the case, because that stuff changes in real time. What was the salary average today will not be the salary average a year from now. And so that's something that we'll look at during this time to make sure that we're providing our team with the resources that they need to be competitive.
Justin?
Obviously, like you said, it's very early in this search process, but I'm sure you've seen reports of her talk about Coach Carey is maybe interested in getting back into coaching. What, if any, interest or contact has there been with Coach Carey? I don't know if you've even met him, but would that be a possibility in bringing back a coach who was just here for 20, 21 years or whatever?
Yeah, I have not had a chance to meet and visit with Coach Carey, but I got a ton of respect for what he's accomplished here. Know a lot of people that know him. Obviously, most of our staff worked with him, and so have just great respect for what he's done here. Probably will try and talk to him at some point in the next few days just about the job and the landscape and what's changed in college athletics, and get his thoughts on the program. Probably not ready yet to talk about candidacy for the job, just because we're still so early in the process, and I don't think it'd be appropriate to do that. But when you have somebody who was recently the head coach and has a lot of experience and was there, if they're willing to have a conversation to talk to you just about the state of the program and the changes that have been made in college athletics, I'm a big data point guy. I'll take any data point somebody will give me. And I understand at the end of the day I have to make a decision, but the most educated decision I can make puts us all in the best position. So I'm definitely not somebody who doesn't want to hear the advice or opinions of others, especially somebody who does have some direct knowledge of the program.
Cody Nesper?
Yeah, Wren. So obviously you haven't been here super long yet, but what do you see as the appeal for this job that is going to attract candidates?
Yeah, I think anybody would be lucky to have this job. I haven't been here very long, but I will tell you, this is home. And the people here I've moved my family around some, and the people here are the most incredible, genuine, kind, thoughtful, passionate people that I've ever been around. We need to do some work on our roads, but the people are incredible. So when you look at what we have from a facility standpoint, from a budget standpoint, from a travel standpoint, even from a history standpoint, 4 different coaches have taken us to 14 NCAA tournaments. And so, we've had some success over the years under different coaches. I think any coach would be lucky to be here. And I know it hurts and it stings when you lose a coach after a year. And I sense that and I feel that. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with West Virginia. Ultimately, what we can't change is geography. And when somebody, says, hey, the most important thing for me at this stage of my life and where I'm at right now is to be closer to family, like if somebody can help me figure out how to rectify that, I'd love for you to do that. But geography is geography. And so I never got a sense that this coaching staff felt like this program was anything less than a program that could compete at the highest levels. And I think our candidate pool will be rich. We're already getting inundated with calls and texts and emails, and I'm not talking about tens, I'm talking about hundreds already. And so, the interest level is high, and we're going to have a really great candidate pool, and somebody is going to be very, very fortunate to be the coach here.
Are you using a search firm? Or?
We have not identified one yet, but I likely will. Even at North Texas, for volleyball, track, I've always used a search firm not to hire the coach. I'm going to hire the coach, and I'm going to probably dictate pretty well who the candidate pool is going to be. We spent all day yesterday going through all 31 conferences, one by one, looking at every coach in that conference. And so we've started that process. But search firms, they cut you a lot of time down because a lot of these calls and inquiries we get, there's a lot of qualified people. There's a lot of people that probably aren't qualified, and we want to make sure that they're being responded to, but I don't have time to respond to all of them. So they'll field a lot of that. They'll start doing reference checks and doing some of that for you, background checks, which, as we know, is critical. We want to make sure somebody's coming in here that's ethical and moral. They also will help facilitate the process in terms of we're going to meet at this location and here's how many we're going to meet with, and getting people in and out of there, and they're not encumbered by necessarily a bunch of state travel laws and stuff like that. They can just go get all that done. So for a lot of reasons, I think using a search firm is the right way to do if you're trying to do it expeditiously. But we have not identified yet which firm.
And you have another decision coming up May 1st with Coach Huggins. As far as his contract goes, you have to come up with a decision for the following year or whatever. What are your thoughts going on that? And has he said anything to you about it?
We haven't had our end of the year meeting yet. We're going to try and sit down sometime towards the end of the week. Obviously, we finished strong. I said this consistently throughout the year. I know the win total wasn't where he would like for it to be, or even our fans would like for it to be. But I felt like all year, we were a top 30 ish team. I mean, and the metrics prove that out. I mean, and those metrics are not subjective; they're objective. And so, and so I was really happy the way it finished. Coach Huggins obviously has had such a rich tradition here and in his career. He's a Hall of Famer. So, he and I will sit down and talk about what it looks like. But I certainly have enjoyed working with him. I think he did a really nice job getting this team to respond when mid-season things didn't look as good. It's a different world coaching today with the portal, and you've got a lot of kids coming in late, and you're trying to get them to gel as a team, and they haven't battled through adversity together, and maybe it's harder to get them to get to that place where they pull for the greater good instead of individually because they're coming in not knowing any of their teammates. And I think he and his coaches did a really good job pulling them together. So he and I'm looking forward to sitting down and talking about what he's thinking and his assessment of the season. But I definitely am proud of what the team was able to accomplish. Wish we could have won a game or two in the postseason. I know he does as well, but that doesn't take away from the accomplishments that the team had. And I'd also just acknowledge we sent out some graphics and stuff, but what a great year for attendance we had for men's basketball. Top 5 all time. Every home Big 12 game on the weekend was sold out. Every game since I've been here, I think, has been 12, 13, 14,000. So there's not very many places left in the country that draw like that as consistently as that. I mean, if you look at even some great places in the Big 12, there's a lot of empty seats, and we did not have many empty seats. That's right. That's right.
Mike Asti.
Ray, can you, I guess 2 questions. One, you mentioned committee a couple times. You had in-house. Who you kind of put together and why? Because you just still getting to know people. And also, the war room, I believe, 5 or 6 hours going through 300 something.
I held them hostage. Yeah.
Attrition, more like it.
Yeah.
I would, I guess, so one, the committee, the constitution of that, and why, but also, what is that day or these days like when you are just going very broad and very, eventually very fine?
Yeah, so when we get to the conclusion of this, I will probably lay out more of the exact committee and the process. What I don't want to do is get them inundated with all of the calls and texts and stuff that I'm getting. But it's a diverse committee that has people who have historical knowledge here, because obviously I'm trying to learn as much as I can as fast as I can, but recognize that I'm inside of 3 months, and then also people that understand sports and those kind of things. And so I feel really good that there's a broad representation. I encourage them to challenge me. I don't want yes people on that committee. And I can tell you from our time together yesterday, I do not have a room of yes people. So I was challenged, and so that's good. That's what you want. You want all of those viewpoints represented. But we have an initial screening committee that's kind of helping narrow those. And I'll be candid. Right now, our list is still growing. Probably by maybe Wednesday, it'll start to narrow considerably. And then. From that group, we'll select a smaller group. There's 5 or 6 of us that were there yesterday. We'll have a smaller group that'll actually go and do the interviews. But we'll be in contact and communication during that time.
So when they come in the room, they come in with suggestions and names, or are you literally going down every team, every conference saying like yes, no, assistant coach?
Yeah, both. Not every league would we go look at assistant coaches. You're probably looking more at the higher end leagues in terms of their assistant coach profiles, and then the mid majors and low majors you're looking at the head coaches in those leagues. But we're combing through. We're not finished yet. We got a handful of leagues left, but we're combing through all 31 leagues.
This gentleman right here, please introduce yourself.
Jake Howard from the DA. Could you see there being any chance that in your discussions with Kerry, he emerges as a candidate, or is this strictly an advice information?
At this point, yeah, I wouldn't try to say that anybody is a candidate or isn't a candidate. But any conversation that I had here early would not be as a candidate. It would just be learning about the job. We won't probably get to the point of having conversations with candidates until end of the week, if not early in the next week. And so, I just, it would be premature to identify anybody as a candidate at this time.
Greg Hunter.
So time frame for this hire, week, month, year?
Not a month, I hope. I don't want to throw a timeline out there, but I don't like uncertainty for the young women in that locker room. Forget everybody else and everything else. The quicker we can deliver them a coach, the more it sets their mind at ease, and the better chance it gives us to retain them. However, I won't rush it just to get somebody. I want to feel like we have turned over every stone and we've vetted all the candidates that are worth vetting, and got somebody who can embrace West Virginia and who can embrace this program. So, I would hope that's certainly less than a month, and hopefully significantly less than a month. But if I start throwing out a date projection, then you guys will start beating me up when we get close to that date projection. So I'm just going to sit on that a little bit and just tell you that we're going to move. I've canceled almost every meeting on my calendar for the next couple of weeks. This has, my sole focus after this meeting today, and we're going to get through it as quickly as we can.
Justin Jackson.
Obviously, when a decision is made, it's the players who are going to have to deal with the person on a daily basis. So, kind of with that in mind, having met with the players, players coming back, did they give you any kind of feedback or thoughts on who they would like or what kind of coach they would like to for?
So Natasha stayed and talked with them a little bit after I did. We're staying in contact with them. And, I invite them to share any thoughts that they have so that, we can build that into a profile. I typically stay away from asking them about specific names because it's human nature to want somebody and I've been through this. I think this may be my 18th or 19th search to do. So I've done it a lot, and I could probably project what I think they would say. But we definitely want to know if there are certain qualities that they desire in a head coach, because I do think it's important to consider their perspective and opinion, and their perspective and opinion is coming from a different place than what mine or yours would be or anybody else's. So, I always welcome thoughts and feedback on the type of characteristics and qualities that one might desire in a head coach. I shy away a little bit more from specific names, just because, for the same reason I've talked about today. I just think it puts you in a place to not be considering as broad of a group of candidates as you should be.
Yeah, how are you going to have the program structured in the interim until you hire the coach? Who's going to oversee the players and make sure they're doing other stuff?
Yeah, so what I shared with our assistant coaches, I met with them. So I met with Dawn, met with the team, then met with the assistant coaches, and just told them, hey, our biggest responsibility is to these young people in our program, and we need them to be in good mental and emotional health. We need them focused on their academics. And so as long as you're employed here, my expectation is that you all are doing that. And then my second expectation is that if you are going somewhere else, that we know that in real time so that we can ensure. And then Natasha, who is the sport program administrator, she's meeting today with their nutritionist, their strength coach, their academic counselor, our mental health folks, just to make sure that everybody understands that we need to be very intentional over the next few days of touching base with each of those young ladies, just to make sure that they feel supported, that they know what's important, and that they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Wesley, do you have a follow-up?
So, is there going to be an attempt to try and get a long-term commitment from this coach? Obviously, the nature of college athletics is things can kind of go quickly and have these type of one-and-done situations. But so, is there going to be an attempt to try and say, hey, we want you here for longer than obviously a one-year period?
Yeah, I think we will probably look at what the buyout structure is, but so much of that depends. It's situational, I mean, I don't know who it would be right now, but let's just say there was an equivalent to Jay Wright hanging out there in women's basketball. Like, we probably would do whatever contract structure Jay Wright wanted if that was hanging out there. So, I think. But you do want somebody who's committed, and somebody will have to come in and tell me why they want to be at West Virginia. That will be important. It can't just be one way of us selling you why you want to be at West Virginia. You need to tell me what research, homework, what you know, and why you want to be here. And then once we start to hone in on the coach, then we can kind of determine what that contract structure would be. So I don't want to go too deep into that, but I do think commitment comes both ways. And so if most of the time a coach has some demands around, what they want to make and what they want you to pay them if you fire them. And so, like, if they're going to ask for a commitment from you, I think it's reasonable to ask for a commitment back from them.
Anybody else? Okay, Mike, here in front.
You mentioned
Maybe Jay Wright wants to coach women's basketball. That's something he hasn't done yet.
You mentioned having some idea of Minnesota's interest before the Big 12 tournament, and then also kind of maybe a surprise on this eventually happening. And obviously the murkiness of the news circulating right after the team lost was just kind of unsettling. Based on how this all unfolded after a successful season, regardless of the reasoning, and wanting to have this done the right way, are there any regrets in this process? Are there any way you could look back on either yourself, the program, or even the former head coach now and how this could have been handled differently? And have there been any conversations with any of the players who were on this past year's team, whether they're run out of eligibility or going to be back, to that end?
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of second guesses or regrets. I mean, from the time I got here, I've made every women's basketball game here at home unless I was out of town. I mean, I would think I've probably been to close to 10 games. I got on a plane after we lost in Birmingham, flew Southwest to Baltimore, got there in the middle of the night, drove all night, or drove over to stay at the team hotel and get up and go to the game the next day. During that time, had lots of great conversations. I mean, I coached, and so I love hoops, and so my conversations with basketball coaches are probably different than my conversations with other coaches because there's just more knowledge there, and so had a lot of great conversations with Dawn. She and I did not know each other when I come here, but we knew of each other. I knew her agent really well. He had my coach at North Texas. And so I made it very clear multiple times that I was really excited about where the program was and where it was headed, and wanted to do whatever we could to keep the momentum going. So I don't think that there was any doubt that we were pleased and willing to invest in the success we were having to make sure that we kept the momentum going. And so I'm not a person who spends a lot of time thinking about coulda, woulda, shoulda anyway. I just don't think that's a real productive use of time when what I really need to be thinking about is getting these young ladies a coach. But no, I haven't heard of anything that anybody felt like we could have handled differently or should have handled differently, and nor have I spent a lot of time, feeling that way.
Okay, members of the media, thank you for your questions. Director Baker, thank you for your time. He will visit with you all again at our press conference announcement. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys.